everybody. Welcome to another Transport Evolved live stream. It is still the holidays, so not everybody is working at Transport Evolved right now. And it's a perfect time of year for us to sit down and reflect on the year ahead, the year that we've just had, and how things are going to change into the future. Later on in the week, we're going to have a video from the entire Transport Evolved team sharing some of their highlights and low points of the year, some of the things that they really enjoyed doing, and some of their hopes and fears for next year. But today, we're going to be talking about the business of Transport Evolved. For those who don't know, this isn't just my pet project. It's not a hobby that I do in my spare time. It is a business. It is a business that supports now 5 full-time, well, almost 5 full-time. It's actually 3 full-time, 1 almost full-time, and 1 part-time employee. That's the way of doing it. Happy New Year, Jim, joining us in the comments there. And so because we are a business and because we primarily rely on your support to operate and do the things we do, I always feel it's our duty to share with you where we get our money from, how we spend our money, and where things are in terms of how things have changed for us in the last 12 months. Because COVID is still raging, as most of you know, we are really having to reinvent ourselves in a lot of ways, things that we haven't been able to do in the last few months because of COVID, and things that we haven't been able to do for the last couple of years because of COVID have had a direct impact on the channel. So we haven't been able to go to Fully Charged Live, which is a show that we really love doing. Hello, Ben Nelson. Hello, Kevin. And thank you very much, Robert. If you haven't gone and watched Ben's very fun but slightly silly video on charging an EV using a treadmill, go watch it. I watched it this morning. It's very good, very fun. Benjamin Nelson over at his YouTube channel there. So thank you, Benjamin. So today what we are going to do is we're going to talk about what has happened this year financially, where we are and where we hope to be in the future. Now, we do not share dollars and dimes with you, but we do share percentages. And I think you can infer a lot from percentages and the changes to know roughly where we are and what we're doing. And some of you may also ask, why is this a live stream when this is such an important video? And I have a notoriously poor internet connection at my house. And the answer is, I want you to be able to ask questions of me, and we can go through the process of exploring where we are together. So hello to everybody who is asking questions and saying hi. If I don't put you up on screen, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just trying to keep this succinct and also on topic. So happy New Year to everybody who's wishing us Happy New Year. And thank you to everybody. Welcome to the winter wonderland that is Northern California and Oregon right now. I wish I could actually show you the view out of the window right now. We had about 8-9 inches of snow so far. We've got another 3 inches forecast tonight. And Michael, who normally sits behind me, he is not in work today because he's not due to be in work today. He's due to be in work tomorrow, but unfortunately he's not going to be because the snow is forecast and I don't think he could safely get here. Anyway, without further ado, let's talk about where we're at and what we're doing this year. If you want to send us a super chat, you can. That's a great way of supporting the channel, especially since we have lost about $4,000 by deciding not to go to CES. And we made that decision because we wanted to protect everybody on staff. We felt it was unsafe given the 80+% increase in COVID cases in the Clark County, in Clark County, Nevada, which is where Las Vegas is, in the last 2 weeks. And we just haven't felt that it was safe. So we are taking that on the chin as a big loss. But other than that, let's delve right in and look at the pennies, where we've spent money and what we're doing. Thanks to Erin for making these little slides here. So overall, Transport Evolved's income, which is great news, increased by 1/3. last year, or rather in 2021. Compared to 2020, we brought in an additional 33% income. So big growth compared to 2020. And prior to that, the year before that, I believe we grew by a similar amount. So Transport Evolved in terms of our income is growing at a really nice, steady rate, and hopefully it will continue. There are some downsides, which I'll come to later on in this particular exploration, but overall, money going up, big thing. Unfortunately, our expenses also increased by 48% year on year. So the amount of money we spent last year has gone up quite considerably this year. Now, a lot of that is down to the fact that we've hired more people. There are more people on staff. And we are being squeezed. Our bottom line is being squeezed. But at the end of the day, the person who suffers when that happens is me. I'm the one who goes, and I'll explain that later on, but I'm the one who takes a pay cut. Everybody else is doing very well. The channel is still making money. It's just, we are profitable. It's just the amount of profit we made this year compared to last is slightly smaller. Let's now look at the kind of the bad bit of this all, which is our viewership. For reasons that are becoming apparent, people don't like long videos. We tend to make longer videos. We've changed up our faces this year. We've introduced other presenters that some of you really like and some of you don't. And just because of the way that YouTube works, and YouTube has been focusing on shorts and a few other things, we've had a 13% decrease in viewership this year, which is interesting because we've had a 13% increase in our subscribers. So the number of people who've watched our videos has decreased by 13%, but at the same time, we've increased our subscriber base by 13%, which is not bad. However, the rate at which people are subscribing has dropped. We're down 27% compared to last year. So fewer people are subscribing every month than were subscribing last year. We have gained fewer subscribers this year. How about that? That's a good way of putting it. However, our increase in revenue from YouTube, and I should probably have made this clear, the amount of money that we are making from our YouTube channel has gone up, partly because we've got involved in super chats this year, partly because we've done more live streams this year, and partly because the adverts that have been playing on our channel are now far more targeted towards our viewer base. So there are more electric cars coming to market. There are more cleaner, greener, safer, and smarter products coming to market. And that's meaning that the amount of money that advertisers are paying Google or Alphabet, whichever way you want to look at it, to put adverts in front of our videos, that amount of money has gone up. So that's where some of that's come from. The other increase in revenue, the money from that, is that we've seen an increase in revenue. Some of that was from January, where when we got the massive, absolutely massive ad revenue that we pulled in from December last year. So Google, YouTube pays you 1 month in arrears. So the money we got in January was for December last year, and December's income from YouTube last year was the highest it's ever been. And a lot of that came from political advertising. We know what happened in December and January last year, or December last year and January this. I'm not going to go into it, but we know that lots of advertising money was spent by PACs trying to challenge the presidential election outcome here in the United States, and that resulted in Transport Evolved, as well as pretty much every other YouTube content creator that I know, getting a really nice increase in the number of doll hairs that they got from advertising at the end of the year. And I suspect that those ads helped increase our revenue. Great comments here from Brian. I've noticed that getting targeted EV ads on videos for chargers, juice box, and other similar items, which is kind of the point I'm making. When an advertiser has a product that is really specifically targeted to a channel, they are more likely to want to spend more money getting it in front of the audience. And thank you very much to Ziri. Thank you very much. Keep up the good job and fight the good fight. Help EVs thrive. Thank you very much. Robert says, are EV ads targeted? All I get are ads for Hyundai SUVs. So Google and the Google algorithm has picked up the fact that Transport Evolved is a car channel, and thus you are more likely to get a car ad. And the ads are often picked by keywords for the video. So if we have a video that is about a Hyundai product, or we have a video about one of its competitors, then it's more likely that that company will advertise to the video. We don't have any say, though, where that comes from. Thank you very much, Daryl. You are an absolute angel. Thank you very much. Every penny really does help. As I say, we're about $4,000 in the hole for CES because unfortunately we couldn't get any money back from Verbo, and we couldn't get any money back from the flight for one of our camera guys who was going to fly and meet us in Vegas. Everybody else was just going to drive down. But combine that with all of the preparation we've done, I mean, we went and purchased like a whole load of face masks and cleaning supplies and stuff like that. It all tolls. It all has a toll. So now we've talked about YouTube and the YouTube channel. Let's talk next about where our money came from, because this is a big thing. And like I said, if you're just joining us, we don't talk dollars and dimes amount. If you were really interested in doing it, you could probably figure it out. But I'm not going to invite doing that because we're talking about money, and that obviously goes into trying to figure out how much people get paid and stuff like that. And I don't think that's an appropriate thing to do. So we deal with percentages because that really makes a big difference. Now, if you are a Patreon subscriber and supporter, you will have seen these slides. I have shared those with you as part of a Patreon post that we made earlier today. But everybody else, you're seeing this for the first time. So let me explain where all of our money comes from. 30%, and I should point out here that I've rounded up or rounded down to the nearest whole figure. I didn't want to do with point percentages, and most of these were point percentages. So I've either rounded it up or rounded it down as appropriate. 30% of our income this year came from YouTube, which is pretty impressive. So if you remember, I talked about the fact that we had an increase in our revenue from YouTube. That is what it's represented as our total income. 30% of all of our income comes from YouTube ad revenues. That also comes from people who have, the YouTube Red or Pro or whatever they call it, where you don't have to watch adverts. So we get some of that. It also includes things like people doing super chat. So if you're doing a super chat right now, like Desiree and Daryl and a couple of others today have done, that money is counted in that YouTube ad revenue there. Also, if you've done like the stickers or anything like that. And next year we are considering doing membership, like YouTube membership to the channel as an alternative to Patreon, so that those of you who don't want to do Patreon can do YouTube membership. It would operate in a similar way. Let me know in the comments below, or maybe in the chat, if that's something that you would be interested in partaking in. And then as we go on through the year, maybe we can play and experiment with the content and how we deliver that to our audience. Our goal, and I don't want to go too off this chart, our goal is to do more sort of prepared pieces. So hopefully we can release those to our Patreon and maybe to our YouTube premium supporters early. We need to look into that and figure out how to do it. So the rest of our income, 41%, the majority in this case, comes from Patreon. And I just want to thank every single one of the 1,180 people who support Transport Evolved through Patreon. Many of you support Patreon like $1 or $2 a month. And I want to make that absolutely clear that you guys are just as valuable and just as important to us as those who do the $50 or $100 a month. So there's 1,189 Patreon supporters right now who help us to grow and to make sure that we are able to do all of the things that we do. Really important question here from Thomas Ivy or EV? I apologize if I've said it wrong. Which revenue stream takes the least percentage as a fee from you? Right now, it has to be Patreon because Google, it's weird. Everybody assumes that, Google has a lot of, Google pays you a lot of money in ad revenue. You can see here we actually make a lot of money, but Google takes almost the same amount as we get paid. So Google takes a massive chunk of the advertising revenue, which is fairly standard in the advertising world. It's a bit like consultants. If you're looking at the IT industry, if someone's hired through a consultancy, through a recruiter, the recruiter gets paid a cut, the consultancy company gets paid a cut, and then finally the money goes to the individual, the actual worker. So even if someone is on a job where they are being paid, let's pull a figure out of the air, let's say they're getting $50 an hour. They might be getting $50 an hour, but the consultancy company might be actually hiring them out for 100 and some per hour, and the recruiter that helped them get that job, they might also be taking a cut. It might be 5, 10, 20%. It depends on each person. 41% from Patreon. We get a pretty good amount of money from Patreon. And disclaimer, I am a Patreon ambassador. I'm part of the Patreon ambassador program. In fact, I did a talk a couple of weeks ago to a Patreon group of creators that focused on burnout and some of the other things that I've been doing. And so that would come into the extra income. We'll come to that in a second. But the majority of the money we get comes from Patreon, and I believe that Patreon takes the lowest cut. Now, a lot of people complain about Patreon because it takes taxes and it takes fees, and that is not Patreon's thing. It is Patreon taking the taxes in order to comply with whatever the law is in the country that you live in. So it never used to be the case. Online, if you were sending money to someone, they got most of the money. But these days, most countries have decided that digital services and goods are a thing. And if you are paying somebody money every month for them to make content for you, which is essentially what Patreon, my relationship between Patreon is, my patrons pay Patreon and Patreon pays me, taxes have to be charged. So in Europe, for example, taxes are levied on the goods and services, even though it's a digital good and services. And those taxes have to be paid. And what Patreon does is it collects taxes on my behalf, and it pays those taxes back to the British government because you, as a British citizen, have paid for a service from a country outside of the UK. Taxes have been collected on the UK's behalf and then paid back to the British government. And as Sally Barber says here, they are charging tax on much the same way as any other publications, TV services, VAT, value-added tax, newspaper or magazine, value-added tax, and the same thing happens there. When I use Patreon, I'm giving a donation and not an effing service. That's not true, though, at least not as in terms of how it works, because you're making a donation. You're making a donation every month, but you're making a donation so that we can create content and provide it to you. And so someone somewhere has decided that legally is determined as a good and service. It's one of the reasons why we have insurance as a company, which I'll come to later on. It's standard taxes. Even though you think it might not be, it does need to be taxed, and those taxes do go towards paying for whatever the taxes in your country are used for normally. I don't have a problem with that. I know a lot of people do, but know that we do get the majority of the funds that you send to us come through to us. Patreon does take a cut. It takes a cut for processing the banking charges because it has to process all those credit card payments, sometimes even small ones. And it also obviously does skim off a little percentage for itself, but everything else comes to us. And I think the amount we get back from Patreon is far better than the amount we get back from YouTube compared to the amount that advertisers actually pay to put adverts on our stuff. Does that make sense? Feel free to ask more questions. But that is where it is. Now, you'll notice here that 1% goes to Ko-fi, or 1% comes from Ko-fi. If you are sending us a Ko-fi donation, the same rules apply. Okay, if you send us Ko-fi, it's normally a smaller amount than it would be through Patreon, and it's an ad hoc service. So you can send, you can send $100 through Ko-fi, or you can send $1 through Ko-fi, and it's processed the same way. There are fees that are deducted through the process. Ko-fi is a bit like Patreon. It doesn't take a huge cut, but about 1% of our income comes from Ko-fi. All right, next, white label. So for those who don't know, we create content for a company. By the way, thank you very much, Mark. It's very kind of you for saying thank you for the transparency. I really appreciate it. It's something that we're really big on here at the channel, and we feel that more YouTubers should be transparent about where they get their money from, but we're trying to lead by example. 13% of our income comes from white labels, and white label is a term that means we produce content for another company and then allow that company to use that content as their brand. So in that case, in our case, it means a New Zealand electricity company by the name of Ecotricity. We have a relationship with them. We produce content for them under a white label agreement. So they get to pick the content that we make, and they can put it up on their website, on their YouTube channel. And you'll notice if you look for their YouTube channel, there is a slightly different, they do a show every Saturday, just like we do a show every Saturday, except their show is called Ecotech Roundup and our show is called Transport Evolved. It's got me in it. It's pretty much the same script. There are little bits that are different. Ecotricity doesn't take our shorts. They only take the main stories, and sometimes we remove stories that aren't applicable to a Kiwi audience. So that is pretty much where that income comes from. About 13% of our total income comes from there. Finally, 15%, that final 15% is things like video production. We currently do video production services. We're working with one company that we do not cover in the industry, and we produce videos for them. They're doing a series of like internal training videos, and we are helping them by producing those videos. We do not cover them on the channel, so it's not a conflict of interest. And we've also done some consultancy services in the past for companies outside of the EV world, where, can you give us a report on this, or can you talk to us about this? Speeches that we may or may not charge for, things like that. That goes into the 15% income, other income. Occasionally we might sell a bit of equipment, that would also go into there. And things like, goodness, what else have we done this year? Oh, like that Patreon talk I gave, that goes straight into there as well. Dave, thank you. Thank you for being so transparent. It's really helpful to understand how all this works. And thank you for making the right call on CES. My pleasure, Dave. And thank you for making a donation today to help us here. Sally Baba says, when you pay for a donation, it's like agreeing to a higher fee for the service you're receiving, just like bartering with any trader, as long as all parties are happy with what they get. And that's kind of where we are at. Everybody has to make money some way, and Patreon is one of the best ways for us to make money and to directly connect with our audience. And if it wasn't for Patreon, we wouldn't exist. Patreon was something I signed up for in 2015 when we moved to the States, and honestly, it happened at the same time as the UK brought in something called VATMOS, which is a really strict set of rules. It was a European thing, actually, where every online merchant, of which Transport Evolved would be classified as one, would have to prove who every customer was, where they lived, what their address was, what their nationality was, what their tax status was. And we would have had to have collected all that information ourselves. Then we would have had to have registered for paying tax in every single country where there was at least one audience member. And then we would have had to have registered to pay tax for, collect taxes for, and pay individual taxes to each country, which meant that every year, come the end of the year or whenever the tax year was, we would have spent literally hundreds, possibly thousands of dollars of person hours trying to do all the paperwork, dealing with accountants, dealing with tax specialists in each country, because we would want to make sure that we were in compliance in order to make that happen. Companies like Patreon, they have a team dedicated for that. And so we take all of that and they take care of it. So we don't have to worry about it because Patreon is doing it on our behalf. That's why I'm happy with that service and what they do. All right. So now you know where all of the money comes from. Let's now look at where our money has been spent this year. So here we go. This is quite a slide. And Erin took a long time to do this. She worked very hard on it, and I think she made it work. All right, so no biggie here, no big surprise of all of the income that we brought in this year. We're kind of going to go round in a circle. We're going to start with the big lump, which is payroll and pay taxes. So this would be for everybody else at Transport Evolved, not me. Okay. So of the income that we bring in every year, 42% of that money goes directly to the other people who work at the company. So that's Erin, that's Kate Walton Elliott, that's Winter Tashlin, and most recently, Michael. This year, it's also included our freelancers. We had a couple of freelancers who worked with us, and we had Kit who worked with us for a while. So all of that accounts for their salary and their taxes that they have to pay on salary. That includes things like, your in the US, you have to pay state and federal taxes. So it includes your state and federal taxes. It includes, all of your other stuff that you're mandated to be taxed on in law. Then we'll move around a bit. 1% advertising. Now, it might sound like we're going, oh, we've spent money on advertising the channel this year, which we haven't. But excuse me, I'm going to have a quick drink here. Advertising, in this case, means the money that we've spent on things like business cards. So we've just bought some new business cards. I don't have one. I'm looking for on my desk for them. We just bought some new business cards for Transport Evolved so that when we were at CES, the CES team were able to go, hey, this is my business card. So that was the first thing. The other thing is things like buying t-shirts and sweatshirts for the team to wear on camera. So things like if we've got a new design that's just come in from our swag store that Erin has done, we will spend a little bit of money and go, okay, we're going to buy everybody a t-shirt like we did for the Christmas hoodie that we did. I bought a Christmas hoodie for everybody, so that goes into there. The next segment is 1% goes to healthcare. Now, right now, only one employee has healthcare. I'm not going to say who it is, but we spend about 1% of our income on providing healthcare for our employees who want it. Now, a couple of employees have opted out of healthcare, so they don't get healthcare. One member gets healthcare right now, and as of the beginning of January, a second employee is going to join to get healthcare as well. So we cover everyone. We make a contribution to their healthcare, to their dental, and to their vision. We live in America. Healthcare is very, very expensive, but we believe at Transport Evolved that everybody deserves to have good healthcare. Luckily for us, the people who have opted out have access to good healthcare plans through other means. But for those who don't, we provide healthcare. And that's really important because, at the end of the day, we're investing in people. This big 42% of all of the payroll that we spend in making sure everybody has a decent living wage. Everybody works well above minimum wage, apart from me, but we'll come to that in a minute. Everybody has access to good healthcare, and that means they are healthier and happier. It means they're more likely to not take days off work, and we get a benefit from having that. So it's a no-brainer. The next thing, 2% is for internet service. Now, I've talked about this on the channel before. I'll make no I'll make no bones about the fact that I live in the middle of a rural part of Oregon and we have no decent internet connection. I personally pay for our Starlink connection. The Starlink satellite that's on our roof is our home internet connection, but we have a backup internet connection, the one I'm using for you right now, and that is the one we use for the business. And the reason we have two internet connections is Starlink is very spotty. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We have a lot of trees in the area, and we needed a reliable, solid internet connection so that team members can reach into our network and pull out files when they need it. It's a very slow internet connection. It's a very expensive internet connection. And that's why this year our internet service is 2% of our total expenses. Then we have insurance. Now, insurance is things like errors and omissions and liability and insuring all of the camera and computer equipment. We just totaled up how much camera and computer equipment we have, and it's a fair bit. So insurance for that is not cheap. Now, home contents insurance, you might say, well, why don't you just include it in your home contents insurance? That doesn't work if you're a production crew and you are traveling around the world. So we once traveled over to India to film something there, and we needed our gear to be covered while we were in India. In fact, when we were transiting through Hong Kong, one of the camera cases was opened by the Chinese security details that work the airport, and they almost broke one of our cameras. Had we not been insured, it would have been a very, very expensive trip. So we have to have worldwide coverage for all of our gear. We have to have worldwide coverage for any gear that we borrow that happens to belong to members of staff. So if Winter or Michael decide they want to use some of their own personal equipment, that has to be insured. And we also have to make sure that everybody has, workers' compensation. So if they get injured on the job, that they have, they don't lose income because of it. We also have to make sure that we have errors and omissions insurance, which is basically including things like there's a cyber attack on our website and suddenly all of everybody's details are leaked, or we said something and some company decides they don't like that we've said that, and so they're going to come after us for poor reporting or something. Those are all things that we have to insure against. So it's a big chunk of change. The next thing that we go through here is our travel. Now, while a lot of our trips are paid for, in fact, before this started, I just got off the phone with a car company that's inviting us to attend something next week. And both Michael and I will be flying out to do that, and we'll be following COVID protocols. And we've been assured it's going to be very, very strictly controlled, much more than CES was, in order to make sure that everyone stays safe, mandatory testing and stuff. We normally get those provided by a car company. So first drive events, when Winter went to the Porsche Taycan event, when Kate went to the Hyundai Ioniq 5 event, when I went to drive the Mustang Mach-E GT, all of those events were covered by the automaker. And when we make a video, when we cover a news story that in which our trip was covered, we will say something like name of company provided, all the things that they provided. So normally it's airfare, lodging, and meals to enable us to bring you this first person report. That's what we normally put, and we put it in our credits and we put it in our description. But sometimes we make trips off the back of our own decision. So the trip we made earlier this year, when we went down to Southern California, when we visited Comma AI, and then we swung through the Bay and we visited Ample, and we did the road trip between the Tesla Model 3 Tesla Model 3 long range rear wheel drive and the Ford Mustang Mach-E GT. That was paid for by us, by Transport Evolved. So I paid for all the hotels, I paid for all the electricity on the charging, and I covered meals for everybody. And so that goes into that travel arrangement. But there are also other costs that aren't met. So when an automaker invites you to an event and you go, yes, please, I'd love to go, and you fly out, normally you get, they make a business they will put you on a business ticket, which is normally quite nice, but those business tickets are normally standard class, they're not first class. Sometimes they can be on a budget airline, and sometimes that means that you don't have luggage. But if you're going to film something, you have to take camera cases with you, and you have to take, extra bags. And so all of those things we have to pay for. So the car company might provide the flight, but we might have to pay extra for our bags, for checked bags and things like that. So that also goes into the travel budget. I know this is long. I know this is not as long. This is too long for a lot of people, but I want to make sure that we're transparent. So we're just going to keep going here. The next segment. Also travel covers things like parking at the airport and things like that. Taxes and contributions. So this is taxes that the company might have to pay. So the company's side of payroll contributions, and also things that we are kind of sending to local governments and things like that. So for an example, we live in Washington County in Oregon, and there is a rule that you have to be taxed on property, and so they tax you based on how much stuff you've got, and so you have to send them literally an inventory of everything that you have in the business, and then they calculate how much that's worth, and then they have to send you a tax bill for that. So all of those things do eventually add up. That also includes things like additional, taxes that I might have to pay on my income. So that all goes in there. 5% also comes from software. Now, that might sound like a huge amount of money, and believe me, it is. We have Adobe Creative Suites. We subscribe to that, and there are 5 people on the team. Everybody has a Creative Suite license. We use software like Isotope, which, we have to keep current. That's the thing that allows us to make the audio sound good. So, we're working on the Akamoto video right now, and there is audio from in camera in the helmet, which sounds terrible when you kind of listen to it off the recorder, and it's all distorted and it sounds horrible. We have software. It's pretty nice professional level software that allows us to figure out and to kind of remove all of the background noise and to make it sound good. Obviously, if we're just doing something basic and we're using something like the Zoom H4 that we've got here, this doesn't require a lot of processing. But if you've got a microphone next to your head, or you're in a noisy environment, so like when we're good example was the Ample video that we did. If you listen to the audio that came off that interview, you probably would have gone, how was it possible to get such good, clean audio signal out of it? And that was from that software. So every year we spend money, quite a lot of money, on software. Things like Pro Tools, Isotope, the Adobe Creative Suite. We've had to buy, because we've got new people on board this year. So we started 2020 with just myself and Erin. We're ending the year with 5 people on the payroll. 4 people. I don't count. So we had to buy some of these this year. This is a DaVinci Resolve speed editor. We have 3 of these, or do we have 4? 3 or 4 of these, and they came with a software, DaVinci Resolve, and we use that for coloring the video, for editing the video. If you've noticed, some of our recent videos have had some really sharp editing in it. It's because we've started using these. They're not cheap. All right, so then we've got other. 9% is all of the things that kind of don't have a category. I know I probably should have come to that one last, but it's things like, incidental expenses, like we're out on a trip somewhere and I need to pay for something that we, urgently need. It might be a pack of batteries for the lav mic, or it might be, I don't know, hotel tip, or it could be any of those things that doesn't really come into any of the other categories. So 9% of our income is just kind of into that mass of all the other things that we have to pay for. By the way, taxes and contributions also includes things like our bookkeeping service, things like that. We use a bookkeeper because we need a bookkeeper now. So yeah, 9% is all the other stuff that we haven't been able to categorize. Another 9% of our income goes towards hardware, computer hardware specifically. So things like hard drives. And if you follow me on Twitter, you will know that Transport Evolved doesn't buy just one hard drive. It buys batches of hard drives. And that's because we use a ZFS file storage system on our server in the other room that also uses a lot of data. Now we record when we're out in the field. We record on these little SanDisks here. So we've got one here. There's another one there in the dock that I'm not going to remove. And then we have, we have portable hard drives. Where are you? We have a little portable hard drive like Chakrayan or Chandrayaan. I'm not sure which one I have right now. Winter probably knows. This is Chandrayaan. So Winter currently has Chakrayan. These little 2 terabyte hard drives that we just shuffle backwards and forwards between different team members so that people can work on stuff away from the office. All of that comes out of that budget, but also server hard drives. And server hard drives, I think we've purchased 25 hard drives this year, 20 hard drives maybe. It happens about once a year, and it's not cheap when it happens. All right. The last 10% here, there is a little bit left, the 11, but the last 10% are things like equipment. So we just bought a new Easy Rig, which is a thing that it's like a backpack. You put it on, and then the camera kind of comes down on top, and you can hold the camera, and it's easier than moving around with a gimbal. We bought one of those last week, actually, or the week before, for use at CES, and it's not going to happen now, but it's okay because the trip that Michael and I are going to be making in the next week or so, we're going to take the Easy Rig for that anyway. Things like our batteries. So this is which one is this? This is one of our PowerEdge base batteries that we use in the Canons. It allows us it's like a DTAP battery, but it also has power out. This is far more economical and allows us to record for a far longer length of time than you would if we just put batteries in the camera. So things like that cost a lot of money. Things like the GoPro 9s. I can't remember if we bought. Yes, we did. We bought these this year. We bought 4 of these this year, so that all goes into that budget as well. That's a lot of the equipment that we've bought, and sometimes we have to buy things like memory cards. So this is a little 256 gigabyte SD card for one of the GoPros. We had one of these go bad this year. It was a 512 one, so we had to buy a replacement. We were out. It was actually when we were on the trip to film the road trip down to Southern California. We had an SD card that literally cracked in 2 lengthwise, and so we had to go and buy a new one because we needed to record stuff. The final bit, that 11%, is the remainder. Now, I haven't said how much I pay myself, and I think that's fair enough not to say. I have hinted multiple times. The amount I pay myself is far, far less than the amount any other person at Transport Evolve gets paid. And per hour of work done. And there's a reason for that. I believe it's important as a company owner and I guess leader of the company to not skim off all the money for myself. And as you can see, 90% of, well, 89%, let's be accurate, 89% of the money we bring in goes straight back out into keeping the channel running, to making sure that people get paid, to making sure the team is safe, to make sure they've got the equipment they need, the gear they need, and we can go do the things that we need to do. There will be changes. So next year, our travel budget, it has to move up because we've got some stuff we need to go and do, and we've got to make sure that we can get there. We've got a larger team. If we've got a larger team, that means it's more expensive to move people about. But that final 11%, I would probably say of that final 11%, 3, maybe 4% stays in the company bank account. That's because you can't start the year with nothing in your bank account. But because Transport Evolved is classified as a sole trader, myself and my partner, obviously we're married, so we're classified as a sole trader. So any money that's left back in the bank account at the end of the year, we get taxed on, even if I haven't transferred it to my personal account. I probably pay myself of that remainder 11%. I probably pay myself 8-ish% of that remainder amount. That is my salary. I also have to pay taxes on that. So that also covers taxes that I have to pay a little bit as well. So that is where all the money goes. I don't know if you have any questions, but that's the way where the money goes, where the money is spent, and all of that. I hope that that gives you a good idea of how we do what we do and why we do what we do and our goals for next year. And also, I hope it dispels the myth that a lot of people have that, oh, YouTubers are really wealthy and they get paid loads of money. I don't. We're not financially struggling. It's going to be tough for a couple of months while we recoup the several $1,000s that we've lost by not going to CES. But we do have to look forwards and grow. Now, some of you would look at the slide I said and go, okay, well, why are your expenses going up this year? And that means your bottom line has shrunk. You're making less money. We are actually growing at a healthy rate. And this year was the year in which I realized that I can't do it on my own. This is the year in which we realized, okay, we need to cut back on our production. And so that means that we have to, grow in a way that is sustainable. And that's one of the things that we've been really focused on. I'm just laughing because Brian said, you mean you don't get that big anti-Tesla check each month? No. Thank you, Ben. A lot of work has to go through and show us all this. It's above and beyond what information any other organization would give us. Thank you, Benjamin. I really appreciate that. I hope to see everybody in person at an event next year if everybody continues to mask, if everybody continues to beat COVID about the face and we get rid of it. If not, then it will be some point in the future. Our goal this year is to start doing more video production work for outside companies. And I know that a lot of you will be frustrated about that, but we did just bring on a video editor. We need to increase our Patreon support. I would like to increase our Patreon support by at least 30% in order for us to become more sustainable long term. I haven't paid myself for 2 months now. And that's one way that we're trying to recoup those costs. But long term, I can't stop paying myself. And so we're going to start doing more production work. The client that we've been working with in 2020, we also worked with them in 2019. They have more work for us this year, and we have a good business relationship. So we're going to be doing more production work for them. And now that there are other people who are producing content, facing content, so Winter's doing more videos, Kate's doing more videos, it allows me to take a bit more of a back seat. It doesn't mean that I don't want to make videos anymore, but it allows me to do all of the things that running a business requires, like paying the taxes, like making sure that we've got all the things up to date, like making sure that our insurance company has got an up-to-date list of all of the things that we own. And that is something that we need to work on. I suck at getting advertisers on board. We're very lucky, and I'm going to show you a sneak peek, but you mustn't tell anybody. We've been very lucky this year. We've got sort of a couple of extra companies that have worked with us this year on advertising. Energy Sage has been one. We've been really lucky working with them. UGears, the last couple of weeks, really, we've been working with UGears, and I know you guys love these models and have been really super excited about working with UGears. We are going to be working with UGears in 2022, and this is a sneak peek of one of the vehicles that we're just going to be promoting next year. It literally arrived yesterday, and it is awesome, and I'm very excited to be working with these guys into 2022. We need to do more of that as a company. A lot of other people in our sector have very strange relationships with advertisers, and they produce a lot of non sequitur ads. There's also only there's definitely certain adverts that we can't do on the channel as a female owned and run channel, for example, I'm not going to be promoting an advert for gentleman care products like a lot of YouTubers can because I'm not a guy. So that would be really weird, right? And there are also a load of advertisers that we don't want to work with because we don't believe that what they offer ties in with our ethics. So we're not going to work with a meal prep company because a lot of those companies produce a lot of waste, and they might be great. They might get a lot of people cooking and eating more healthily, but at the same time, we would much rather work with a company that encourages people to have less waste in their life. Let's put it like that. Dave, thank you very much. And also Jesper, thank you very much. You're very kind. And Dave says, pay yourself, Nikki. I do. Sometimes. Winter, if you want to advertise gentleman grooming products, be my guest. I just don't think our audience will be all that into it. Please don't do wallet advertising. We were approached a couple of weeks ago by a wallet company, and we haven't said yes. So that gives you some thoughts there. But we have a load of companies that we want to work with who are working on ethical products, and I think that for us, trying to find a right advertiser is a really hard decision because we've built a name for ourselves for our honesty and our integrity, and I know that sometimes has made us enemies because we just are honest about everything, and a lot of car companies don't like that, and a lot of advertisers don't like that. We say it as we see it, and that normally includes positives and negatives, and I think that is a challenge. Sometimes people don't want to hear that. So we are coming up on an hour. I only intended this to be about 30 minutes. So I'm going to say thank you for joining me. I appreciate the questions, very insightful questions that people have had. One person says, when are we going public via a SPAC? Everyone else is. And we joked about that. We joked about that in the team a couple of weeks ago. And I think I said that I believed that the company was worth several million as a consequence of the overinflated SPAC valuations that come in. Look, a lot of YouTube content creators are in it for themselves. They just want to make money. And I think it's not a direct criticism at any one person. I'm not willing to call out people, but there are people in this sector who I know are directly in it because they want to make money from it. They are only doing it because they believe that they can make money from it, and the EV stuff is kind of the extra stuff, and we're not like that. At the end of the day, I want Transport Evolve to continue to grow. I want Transport Evolve to grow into a much more versatile and representative company of regular people who are buying regular cars, who want to buy regular cars. I want us to cover more transportation solutions. I want us to cover more energy. I want us to highlight more disenfranchised communities. I want us to focus on electrifying everything. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many $100,000 sports cars like the Porsche Taycan people buy, it doesn't allow regular people who may not be able to ever afford a car like that to be able to plug in and become electrified. And at the end of the day, we are facing a climate crisis. Outside right now, there's 8 inches of snow on the ground, and there's 8 inches of snow on the ground because the jet stream has become really super screwed up. And we've got much colder temperatures than even Anchorage, Alaska in the last couple of days. And I think that's really important. Channel really helped make some great trades on the market, says Jason. I'm glad. I don't know if you know, but we have a moratorium that nobody at the company is allowed to have stocks and shares traded in a public. Nobody in the company is allowed to have shares that they themselves have picked in any of the companies we cover. So if someone has a mutual fund, for example, if you have a Fidelity mutual fund and Fidelity picks the stocks that you're going to have in your portfolio, that's totally okay because you don't have a direct direct financial influence on what's going. But nobody who works for the company is allowed to go, I'm just buying 10 Tesla shares and we're going to see what happens. That's not allowed for any company. So that's the way it is. So I'm glad that you've been able to make money off it. A lot of people tease me and say, well, what if you'd have bought Tesla back in the early days? I would be probably quite rich. But I don't think I would feel the same way about the transportation world that I do. And I've met some really amazing people along the way. And again, 1,189 Patreon supporters. I would love to see that grow to 1,500 this year. Electric snowblower or electric plow reviews coming soon. Well, as it happens, a good friend of mine has literally just taken a new snowblower. So maybe I need to have a word with her about that. And we can go and film with her if she says yes. We'll see if we can make that happen. There's one more video coming from the team later this week, and we've got some great videos planned for next. CES coverage is going to be different. Obviously, we're not going, but we're going to try and cover the big stories as and when they happen. I'm going to be out of the office for a couple of days, and so is Michael. So you're going to bear with us as we try and navigate the new normal of Omicron. Enjoy the rest of your holiday. Happy New Year. Make sure you tune in to our end of year review on Friday. I think it will go out. It might go out on Saturday. But until then, thanks for joining me. Thanks to all of you for supporting. And as always, keep evolving.